Honestly, it's giving main character energy, and she totally understood the assignment. No cap.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot all at once.
Right. Like if you just heard that sentence and your brain completely short-circuited, you are absolutely not alone.
No, not at all. It's a really profoundly disorienting experience for a lot of people.
Totally. You're just scrolling social media, maybe reading the comments on a video,
Hmm.
or or even just having a casual chat with a younger colleague, right? And suddenly you're hit with this string of words.
Words that are definitely English.
Exactly. They are English, but they seem to make absolutely zero sense in the order they were just spoken.
Yeah, you recognize the individual vocabulary words, but the collective meaning is just, well, it's completely hidden from you.
Yeah.
Like you might hear someone say, "That's so low-key iconic," or "No cap, it just hits different."
Or they point to a friend and say, she really understood the assignment.
Exactly.
Or my personal favorite, and I hear this one constantly. I'm not going to lie, it's giving main character energy.
It's everywhere. And the natural instinct for a lot of people is to just assume these are internet typos or like fleeting teenage errors.
Right, like kids just talking too fast. But we really need to establish reality right out of the gate for this deep dive. These are not mistakes.
No, they're not. This is modern English.
It really is. It's the contemporary conversational landscape. It's emerged from social media, Gen Z, and just this total blending of how we speak online and offline.
Which is precisely why we're exploring this today, because this vocabulary is no longer confined to teenagers texting each other. I mean, it's fully crossed the boundary.
Yeah, into professional conversations, right?
Yes, casual workplace chats, everyday speech across multiple generations. It's just part of the linguistic ecosystem now.
I actually like to think of this linguistic shift sort of like a smartphone software update.
Oh, I like that.
When your phone starts acting buggy because the operating system is out of date? Well, to keep your conversational skills running smoothly in the modern world, you essentially have to mentally download the new language patch.
That's a great way to look at it.
So our mission today is to decode 20 of the most common modern English phrases. We're going to look at what they mean, the mechanical reasons why they work, and, crucially, when they are actually appropriate to use.
Sounds like a plan.
So let's start with the absolute foundation of this new vocabulary. It's a phrase that basically functions as a stamp of truth. No cap.
Right. No cap. So this translates essentially to no lie or seriously or I'm being honest.
But, like, where does the hat come in?
Well, to understand how it functions, you really have to look at the underlying slang tradition. In that context, the word cap just means lying.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you are capping, you are telling a falsehood.
Huh.
So the mechanism is just a very straightforward negation. No cap equals I am not lying.
got it. So if I'm trying to convince you that my cooking skills have dramatically improved recently, I might sit down and say, no cap, that was the best meal I've ever had.
Exactly. You are preemptively telling the listener not to doubt the scale of your statement. It's an insistence on authenticity.
Okay, so if no cap is about objective truth, how do we describe subjective experiences? Because sometimes you encounter something that just feels, I don't know, magically better than usual, but you can't put your finger on why.
Right.
Is that where it hits different, comes into play?
That is the exact use case. Yeah, you use it hits different to describe something that is affecting you more deeply or just differently than it normally would.
Interesting.
It's almost always utilized in a positive, highly specific, and kind of hard to explain context.
Like what?
For instance, someone might say, that song hits different at 2 a.m. Or rainy day coffee just hits different.
I really love that phrase. But I had to push back just a little on how revolutionary it actually is.
Oh, how so?
Well, isn't hits different essentially just the modern equivalent of saying something has a certain je ne sais quoi,
Oh, wow.
right? Like we're basically just bridging a generational gap with a classic French idiom. We lack the precise vocabulary to describe why the coffee is better in the rain, so we just acknowledge the unexplainable elevation.
I mean, that is a phenomenal comparison. The underlying mechanism is completely identical to je ne sais quoi. By saying it hits different, you're acknowledging an emotional or sensory elevation that defies strict categorization.
Yeah, it's just a vibe.
Exactly. It's a linguistic admission that the context, like the rain or the time of night, has fundamentally altered the experience in a way you can't really measure.
Okay, let's pivot from heightened, unexplainable feelings to feelings we might, actively want to hide.
Okay.
Say I have an embarrassing reality television habit. I might say, I low-key love that show, even though it's ridiculous.
Right. So low-key means doing something secretly, quietly, or to a moderate degree.
Like a confession.
Exactly. Functionally, it operates as a linguistic shock absorber. It softens a confession that carries mild social embarrassment.
That makes sense.
But it can also be used to highlight subtle excellence. Like you could say, she's low-key one of the best in the team. The mechanism there implies that her excellence is quiet, understated, and kind of flying slightly under the radar.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what if I want to completely abandon my shame and just shout my opinions from the rooftops?
Then you deploy the exact opposite, high key.
High key.
Yeah, this means you are doing something openly, obviously, and intensely. You are stripping away any pretense of subtlety. You would say, I high-key want to leave this meeting, or that presentation was high-key impressive.
So I am essentially putting this statement in bold font with a highlighter.
Yes, you are taking full ownership of the intensity.
Okay, let's look at a phrase that seems to be about executing tasks, but from what I gather, it's actually about social awareness. Understood the assignment.
Oh, this is a great one. This phrase is used when someone completely nails a situation. They did exactly what was needed, or they performed perfectly for the specific moment.
Like dressing for a party.
Exactly. Imagine you're at a themed event and someone's attire is flawlessly on theme. You'd point and say, look at this outfit, she understood the assignment.
Can you use it at work?
Oh, absolutely. It works perfectly in professional settings. Like the team really understood the assignment on this campaign.
It feels like it implies a shared, almost unspoken standard of excellence, right? Like a person not only recognized the standard but met it flawlessly. They basically read the room.
That's exactly it.
So let's shift gears from these core descriptors to how modern speakers verbally react to the people, places, and atmospheres around them.
Okay.
Because I hear this next one everywhere, and grammatically it feels like it's missing a word.
Wow.
The phrase is simply, it's giving, followed immediately by a noun.
Yes, it's giving blank. It's a highly versatile phrase, meaning a person or thing has the energy, vibe, or quality of the inserted noun.
But why drop the verb?
Well, the reason it works so well and why it feels dramatically abrupt to you is that it skips the descriptive verb entirely and forces the listener's brain to fill in the associative blanks.
Give me an example.
You might look at a colleague and say, that presentation, it's giving CEO energy. Or you walk into a venue and note, this restaurant is giving 1950s diner vibes.
Got it. So you're painting a very complex picture by invoking a specific archetype, rather than awkwardly listing out the individual details.
Precisely.
Okay, what about when something from the outside world takes up residence in your brain against your will? Rent-free.
Oh, yes. Rent-free describes exactly that scenario. It is when something lives in your head constantly without your permission.
Like a bad song.
Exactly. That song has been living rent-free in my head all week. Or it could be a memory. That awkward moment from 3 years ago is still rent-free.
See, I think rent-free is brilliant because it perfectly diagnoses the specific anxiety of the modern overstimulated brain.
How so?
Well, we consume an endless barrage of information every day, right? And certain random, annoying, or embarrassing things just set up camp in our minds. By saying they live there rent-free, we are pointing out the injustice of them taking up space without contributing any value.
I love that. That is the exact psychological mechanism at play. It beautifully externalizes the blame.
Right.
It frames the situation so that you are not actively obsessing over the awkward moment. Rather, the moment has aggressively moved into your mind like a terrible tenant.
Totally. Now, what if I observe a behavior that perfectly aligns with what I already know about someone? I might say, that tracks.
Yeah, very common.
But honestly, how is that tracks any different from just saying, that makes sense? What's the functional difference there?
It's a subtle distinction, but it's an important one. Saying that makes sense simply means you comprehend the logic of an event.
Okay.
But saying that tracks implies you have been passively collecting behavioral data on a person or a situation. It means the new event is consistent with established precedents.
Ah, see.
So you'd say, she stayed up all night before the deadline. Yeah, that tracks. Or the project ran over budget. Honestly, that tracks. It confirms a statistical pattern rather than just logical comprehension.
Okay, before we get to the next phrase, I have a theory I want to run past you.
Let's hear it.
So if we live in a society that documents its entire life on social media, where everyone is constantly holding a camera, framing shots, and broadcasting their existence, It seems totally inevitable that we would start using cinematic terms to describe our own psychology.
Right.
Is that where main character energy comes from?
Your theory is spot on. Main character energy means acting or feeling like the protagonist of your own story.
The star of the show.
Exactly. You are confident, self-aware, and unabashedly the center of the narrative. Someone might say she walked into the room with pure main character energy. Or, self-reflectively, I woke up feeling main character today.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because our lives are now curated feeds, the language has adapted. We no longer describe ourselves merely as participants in a community. We describe ourselves as the director, writer, and star of our own broadcasts.
And the ultimate goal of any main character is to succeed triumphantly. Which brings us to a very high-impact word, slay.
Slay, yes. To slay means to do something exceptionally well, to succeed definitively, or to look amazing while doing it.
So she absolutely slayed that interview.
Perfect. Or, as encouragement, you could say, you're going to slay this presentation. It also functions as a standalone interjection of praise. You can just enthusiastically say, slay.
Okay, so we've covered reactions to individuals, but how does this language handle assessing the collective mood of an entire room?
That requires a vibe check.
A vibe check.
Yes. This is the verbal act of assessing the general mood, tension, or energy of a person or a situation. Like, how is the meeting? Did it pass the vibe check?
What if it's bad?
If you walk into a space and the atmosphere feels inexplicably hostile or off, you would observe, not sure about this place, vibe check is off.
Okay, so from subtle atmosphere readings to extreme verbal reactions, the phrase, I'm dead, is used constantly, but if you take it literally, it sounds incredibly morbid. I assume we are not using this to announce actual medical emergencies.
Far from it, no. I'm dead is deployed when something is overwhelmingly, hysterically funny.
Like he did what? I'm dead.
Exactly. The mechanism is pure hyperbole. The joke was so funny, it literally ended your life. However, because it relies on such extreme exaggeration, you must exercise caution.
Fair enough.
This requires a baseline of levity to function correctly. If you use it in a genuinely serious corporate budget meeting when someone delivers bad news, the disconnect will be disastrous.
Note taken. Do not use fatal hyperbole during Q3 earnings reports.
Please don't.
So let's look at a phrase about taking immediate action. Send it.
Send it means going for it. Committing to an action, often completely abandoning caution or overthinking.
Give me an example.
Just send the email, send it, or you've been thinking about it too long, send it.
With send it, basically just the digital age's version of Carpe Diem.
Mhm.
It feels like the modern rallying cry to seize the day, hit the button, and launch the rocket.
It is the exact digital descendant of Carpe Diem. It isolates that fleeting, terrifying moment of hesitation before you do something irreversible, and it provides the linguistic push to break through the fear and just execute the action.
I love that. Let's talk about how this language frames the passage of time. The word era.
Right. In modern parlance, an era is a phase or period of your life, usually defined by a singular quality, theme, or goal.
Like how?
You might say, I'm in my quiet era, meaning you are currently prioritizing peace and routine above all else. Or she's in her main character era, meaning she is actively prioritizing her own needs.
Can companies have eras?
Oh, definitely. It is even used corporately, like we're entering our growth era as a company.
Well, I am definitely entering my learning era for this deep dive.
It's a good era to be in. And what makes era so effective is that it frames life as a series of temporary chapters. It is incredibly forgiving.
How do you mean?
If you are having a terrible month, you aren't a failure. You are simply in a difficult era. And by definition, eras eventually end and transition into new ones.
That is a remarkably healthy psychological framework hidden inside casual slang. I never thought about it like that.
It really is.
Now, what happens when a situation is so absurd or overwhelming that your brain just completely gives up?
You deploy the phrase, I can't even.
I can't even.
Yeah. This implies being so overwhelmed by something funny, ridiculous, or exasperating that you literally cannot form a complete sentence to express your reaction.
Like he said, what? I can't even.
Precisely. The mechanism here is intentional incompletion. The sentence trails off because the emotional response has effectively short-circuited the language center of the brain.
Okay, I want to take a quick break from the definitions for a moment, because I know a listener out there is thinking, this is fascinating, but I could never actually use this vocabulary at the office without sounding ridiculous.
Sure.
But I want to share a real-world story from our sources that proves this can be mastered by absolutely anyone. It's about a man named Min Jun.
Ah, yes. The anthropological approach.
Exactly. So Min Jun had been in his London role for 8 months,
Yeah.
and his technical textbook English was flawless. But when he sat in casual team meetings, he felt completely lost. The banter was just flying past him. His colleagues were casually dropping phrases like, "That campaign totally slayed." Another would chime in, "No cap." And a third would say, "It's giving exactly what was needed."
And he had no idea what they were saying.
Right. So Minjin did what most of us do in that situation. He just smiled and nodded. But then he changed his strategy. He didn't go to a grammar book. He started learning these phrases one by one through pure context.
Very smart.
He watched when people laughed, he noted the social dynamics, and he asked strategic questions.
And that is exactly why he succeeded. He treated the modern office not as a classroom, but as an ecosystem. He studied the natural habitat of the speakers.
Yep. And 3 weeks later, he got to test his field research. A colleague brought him a draft presentation and asked for his honest thoughts. Minjin looked at the slides, paused, and delivered the exact perfect response. He said, "No cap, this is giving CEO energy."
Flawless execution, honestly.
Right. His colleagues stared at him for a full second, burst out laughing, and said, "You've leveled up."
This is great.
And he genuinely had. He bridged the gap, which actually sets us up perfectly to dive into our final set of phrases.
Okay, let's do it.
Because once Min Jun mastered the basics, he could move on to these, which deal heavily with intense emotional states, interpersonal dynamics, and social judgments.
Right.
Let's start with big adjective energy.
So this is a close relative of main character energy. It means radiating a particular quality at a very high intensity. It's about an aura that precedes any actual action.
Okay, give me some examples.
You could observe someone and say, she walked in with big boss energy. Or note a protective dynamic by saying, that's big sibling energy right there. Or even self-motivate by saying, Monday morning, big ambition energy.
Okay, from projecting energy outward to having an unexpected emotion sort of sneak up on you. Catch feelings.
Ah, yes. Catch feelings describes unexpectedly developing an emotional attachment to someone, almost always romantic.
Like, I wasn't supposed to catch feelings, but here we are.
Exactly. And the phrasing is brilliant because it completely removes agency. It frames the emotional attachment as something you caught, like a cold. It happened to you entirely outside of your control.
Wow, that's clever. Okay, next up. When you are assessing a complex situation and you want to isolate the one variable that makes it amazing or terrible, you use the phrase, "It's the specific thing for me."
Right. It points out the exact element you find most notable. So you might say, it's the confidence for me, or it's the timing for me.
So it's isolating the key factor.
Yeah, it acts as a verbal spotlight, just cutting through the noise to highlight the decisive factor.
Now, when everything aligns perfectly and you are entirely unbothered by the world, you achieve the state of living my best life.
Yes, this denotes genuine thriving and enjoying a period of particular contentment, like 3-day weekend coming up, I'm about to be living my best life.
It's just pure joy.
Exactly. It is a vocal declaration of joy.
So if I am living my best life, enjoying my 3-day weekend, and someone comes along and shatters my peace with a completely unreasonable demand, what is the verbal eye roll I use to express my outrage?
You exclaim, the audacity.
The audacity.
Yes. This conveys shock and mild outrage at someone's nerve or boldness. For example, he showed up an hour late and asked for a raise. The audacity.
You know, it is essentially a modern-day Shakespearean gasp.
Oh, for sure.
Like, you can physically envision the person clutching their pearls as the words leave their mouth. It just packs so much dramatic theatricality into just 2 words.
It really does.
Okay, so now that we have decoded the vocabulary, we arrive at the most critical lesson of this entire deep dive. Because knowing the definitions is only half the battle.
That's right.
The other half is understanding the boundary lines of when they are actually acceptable to use.
Yeah, linguists call this register awareness. These phrases thrive in casual workplace conversations with younger colleagues, in social media captions, text messages, and relaxed social environments.
But there are limits.
Oh, the boundary line is incredibly rigid. They strictly do not work in formal professional writing, client communications, senior leadership presentations, or any context demanding a formal professional register.
I feel like using modern slang at work is a lot like deciding to wear a very bold, bright, oversized hat.
A hat.
Yeah, like if you wear it with natural, authentic confidence and you happen to be at the right kind of casual party, you look incredible.
Okay, I'm with you.
But if you force it, or worse, If you wear that bright hat to a formal board meeting, nobody is listening to your ideas anymore. They're just staring at the hat. The hat ends up wearing you.
That is a flawless analogy. And if you force the language without register awareness, you immediately lose credibility. The sources actually provided a final, brilliant story that illustrates the high stakes of getting the authenticity test wrong.
Yes, the social media manager interview. So a company was hiring for a role where the panel desperately needed someone who truly understood how young audiences speak. To test the candidate, they showed her examples of content, including a post from a major corporate brand that was trying entirely too hard to sound young and hip.
And her critique basically dismantled the brand's entire strategy.
It did. She looked at the panel and gave this exact critique. This isn't working. It's trying to give young energy, but it's not actually it. The language is dated, nobody says these things anymore, and the timing is off. This would have landed in 2020. Now it just gives cringe.
Ouch.
Right. But then, when the panel asked her what would actually work, she laid out the definitive philosophy of modern slang.
Which is so important.
She said, something that doesn't try to use the slang, just understands the vibe. The slang isn't the point. The authenticity is the point. When brands use no cap in 2026, it's giving out of touch.
And she got the job because she understood the underlying mechanism of commodification. Understanding modern language is not about performing it like a script. It is about knowing it well enough to use it correctly. And crucially, knowing when not to use it.
It makes me wonder, though, by the time a massive corporate brand prints a slang word on a billboard or puts it in a television commercial, is that word officially dead in casual conversation?
Almost without exception, yes. The moment a word is commodified by a corporation to sell a product, it is stripped of the subcultural power that made it cool in the first place.
It loses its edge.
Exactly. It loses its authenticity. To the people who invented it, the word instantly becomes cringe, and they just abandon it.
Well, we have truly traversed the landscape today. We've decoded 20 modern English phrases, all the way from no cap to the audacity. But I really want to reiterate the core mission for you, the listener.
Yes, please do.
The goal here is not to memorize this list so you can go into the office tomorrow and impersonate a Gen Z native speaker, if that isn't naturally who you are. The ultimate goal is fluency.
And fluency simply means understanding the world around you. It means no longer feeling completely lost or alienated when you overhear a conversation, and having the option, if the moment is right and the register is casual, to actually participate.
So before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Building on what we just discussed about corporate commodification, we often complain about how fast modern slang changes.
It does change fast.
But what if the rapid turnover of this language isn't just a side effect of the internet? What if it is actually a deliberate collective defense mechanism by younger generations?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. They might be intentionally creating a linguistic moving target to keep outsiders, and specifically corporate brands, from commodifying their culture too quickly.
A moving target.
Yeah. The second a brand figures out the vocabulary and puts it on a billboard, the culture has already invented 5 new phrases and left them behind.
It creates a perpetual arms race of authenticity.
Exactly. It's just something to think about the next time a phrase leaves you utterly baffled. Anyway, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Be sure to subscribe to Fluent Daily so you never miss an update. We've got some great stuff coming up. We really do. On our next deep dive, we are tackling English for difficult conversations. We will be exploring the specific language required for addressing conflict, delivering hard truths, and having those high-stakes conversations that everyone actively avoids, and doing it in a way that actually resolves things. See you next time.